Hi, everyone. This is the Innovation Blueprint podcast by ORIL. Today, we're talking with Arjun Mali, the Chief Operating Officer with Grata Technologies. Grata is an innovative PropTech company focusing on modernizing multifamily and student housing and has an all-in-one smart living platform. I'm not going to tell all you about it. We have Arjun to give us the introduction about Grata in a bit more detail. So first things first, Arjun, welcome. And if you can tell our audience more, if not everything, about Grata, what do you do, what kind of problems you're solving for property managers and residents, I'll give the floor to you on this one.
Sure, no, thank you, and pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. Grata is essentially, the shortest way to say it is kind of a super app for multifamily student buildings, but we're kind of, the more official answer is an all-in-one smart living platform for multifamily student buildings, residential buildings. And kind of what we saw early days was, maybe I can get into a little bit of how Grata kind of started. So it's 2020, COVID had just hit, and actually our CEO and our chairman, who's actually Troy's father, ended up they wanted to go visit each other in Canada. They're both living in the US at the time, and unfortunately, you got trapped together in a one-bed plus den for over 6 months in Canada at one of these apartment buildings. And what they kind of saw was during COVID, no building management was on site, no security, there was no digital product. So basically, all operations of the building just kind of ceased, and residents were sort of left to fend for themselves. And that's kind of where, while trapped in that apartment thinking about, there must be digital solutions out there, and everyone kind of thought there was, right? There's all sorts of digital solutions for buildings that are out there. Most people were kind of used to like a web-based tenant portal that people used a lot. And I think when we started really looking at the space, we started to realize there was a kind of a big gap where there was, or a lot of fragmented kind of solutions that did one thing, but not everything. And that's kind of the genesis behind Grata. And kind of now we kind of play the intersect of three core kind of pillars. So it's property management, resident or tenant experience, and then smart IoT, kind of all wrapped into one platform. And the big kind of overall theme we saw across these buildings was centralization was a big one, right? They're running too many different systems and wanted everything to kind of center down to one thing. A lot of failed kind of integrations or hardware that wasn't compatible with certain software. So that created issues where essentially they're using all types of different systems. And one of the kind of things that we, took a look at in the space was a lot of the products and solutions that are out there and platforms were really geared towards like new development, new construction, new inventory of units hitting the market. And no one was really specializing on retrofitting existing assets. And that's kind of where we started. And I think we started with solving the most difficult challenges first, which was I've got an intercom system, I've got an access control system, I've got a smart lock system, I've got smart thermostats. They don't talk to each other. They're all running on different platforms. How can Grata help, as an example? Or the difference is, there's a building that's pretty nice, amenity-wise, all that type of stuff, and 200 units plus, but there's no digital or smart IoT solutions in that building at all. And I think with the other kind of underlying kind of market dynamics that are going around COVID was offices went dead. So commercial, like a lot of this technology was very much being put into commercial buildings, not so much residential. A lot of people were going into the offices. And then something flipped where obviously nobody was going into offices anymore. Everybody's at home. And now a lot of portfolios that were either, would have assets in industrial, retail, commercial, residential. Slowly you could see them basically divesting their assets away from commercial and retail potentially during that time and going heavily into multifamily. And that's kind of where, if the portfolio, they were acquiring less, developing less, but decided to bolster down on their existing assets, right? And centralization, maximizing NOI was like kind of a core goal. And that's kind of where Grata really specializes, right? For existing retrofit assets, we kind of come in, take off those mechanical locks, put on smart locks, for an example, integrate the access control system, integrate the camera security system, intercom, smart thermostats, and all that, and basically centralize it into one mobile app experience for both residents and managers. So for residents now, they've got our app, which is the Grata app, which is effectively their key to go in and out of these buildings, control the thermostats in their units. And then on top of that, we kind of layered on top of all those other kind of property management resident feature sets that they expect, things like payments, amenity booking, service requests, building news communication, news feeds, in-app marketplaces, that type of thing. But I think one thing that we really wanted to kind of crack the code on, and that we noticed a lot, was little to no engagement on basically a lot of web-based or just tenant experience-based type of platforms. So that was essentially problem number one, right? Like we saw a standard tenant web portal. Residents would potentially only use this like once every 30 to 60 days to either make a complaint or pay their rent or to do like one very simple utility-based function. And it wasn't like it was at the top of their radar where they're logging in every day. And a lot of these platforms are kind of measuring success by saying, hey, I got 80% engagement. And what is the definition of that engagement? Because if you're saying
number of people that actually registered on the app.
Exactly. Or you're logging in once in a month or once in 3 months, that's not really engagement. And our definition of engagement was truly like daily active usage. That's engagement for us, and that's what we strive to kind of accomplish. And then, one of the other things we kind of noticed was, okay, you basically have not unlocked your resident base digitally, because the adoption starts off potentially high for these web-based portals, and it just ends up trickling downwards. Where as more and more units get turned, more people come in. Like I've seen these emails, and particularly condo buildings, where a lot of these platforms are almost like begging residents to adopt and get on these web portals. It starts somewhat high, and then trickles down over time. Engagement's not daily active; it's monthly or even like bi-monthly by that basis. And then that's kind of what we saw as the first trigger. Like, how do we unlock these people digitally? Like, how do we get true daily active usage with high adoption from the start? And then, problem number two is we're seeing, like, because the residents weren't unlocked digitally, property managers can't effectively manage their resident base digitally either, which then resorts in them, depending on like kind of old school processes, like collecting physical checks, for example, for payments, posting paper notices or slipping them under doors, and just being able to not reach every resident that's actually in their building in an effective way. And then the third thing we noticed a lot was there's a lot of physical keys, physical fobs, and physical like garage clickers, or even some of those garage labels that people hand out, they stick on the windshield of their car, and that allows them to come in and out of the gate. The assignment of those physical items creates like a lot of operational work. Like, someone has to physically be in an office, they have to collect keys, hand them out, ensure they're not being copied, all that kind of stuff. And it requires, actual human capital. It requires also recurring operational costs, in the sense of, every time you turn a unit, legally you're supposed to kind of change out the locks, change out the cylinders, and that's a rekeying / locksmith cost for every unit you're turning. Average is around $250 every time you do it. And we also heard of, situations like a master key or a grand master key at a property being lost or being taken off site, whether intentional or not. But again, the reality is, if there's a master key that goes missing and people find out about it, you're legally obligated to switch out every single one of those locks. And that, call it a 600 unit building, that's a 6-figure problem just for it to potentially happen again. And these have been real cases where a super walked off site angrily with a master key, or some people found out that it's gone missing. A lot of properties trying to potentially hush it up and not say anything about it because they don't want to avoid the problem. But that is a reality, and that's really where having kind of smart locks as a basis really kind of helps with that. So we looked at keys, fobs, garage labels, all that type of stuff, and we were like, that really should be digitized.
Yeah, that all-in-one tag that you mentioned in the very beginning, that now makes like a lot, not just a lot more sense, but you going through these traditional problems, if you will, that you might have as a resident or as a property manager, and this light really kind of shines. How would you say you've already mentioned a couple of things that probably sets Grata apart from other products in the industry that help with property management, help your resident experience, whatever it may be. It's been 4-ish years, right, since the ideation, and there's this kind of the before after for Grata. How would you, in maybe 1 or 2 sentences, put how much this disrupted the traditional property management experience? Maybe you had like a very definitive feedback from the users of the application or the whole hardware setup from the get-go. How would you maybe describe the effect it had on the audience itself?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So we started doing retrofits first. And I guess, when you're starting out, clients will try and throw you their most challenging or most difficult building because that's where they're having the most problems, right?
Show me what you got.
And I think we took a couple of different approaches. So one, we're trying to centralize everything and be an all-in-one platform, right? But I think one thing that we saw in the space is that it didn't just stop there. Like, you couldn't just be an all-in-one platform. There's a lot of other people trying to do the similar kind of thing. You really have to be an all-in-one PropTech partner as well. So other kind of platforms we've seen that are potentially similar on the new dev side is they're not end-to-end in the sense of, like, they have a platform, they will ship you the hardware, but it's still on you to get an installer, still on you to configure and commission it properly, and then the SaaS bill starts for their platform. And the thing we saw is, like, implementation of hardware on site is literally half the battle of making sure people are utilizing your software properly. So we kind of took it on ourselves to be an all-in-one PropTech partner. So we will manage everything from procuring, selection of hardware, white glove delivery on site, installation on site, commissioning, and we'll take it further and also do adoption and training of both resident managers. Because at the end of the day, and there's a reason why we spend a lot. I'll get onto that as well. The end goal is when we leave site, and one of the other differences is we want to be in and out within a work week max, no matter how big the project site is. So, like, this can't be a burdensome thing for property managers or owners where a project deployment is going to drag on for weeks to months, right? Which is what we've kind of seen in the space. We kind of made it on a goal in the company that whatever the site, we're in and out by Monday to Friday. So it's 100 units, easy, small team can get it done. 1,000 units just needs a bigger team, 12 locksmiths or whatever the case is, but we're still going to be out of there in 5 days. And it's quite amazing to see on site because it's kind of like a F1 team just going door to door with locks and drills and swapping them all out, onboarding the residents. And we do a lot of the most disruptive part is basically putting in thermostats and locks in these units. And if you think about retrofits, you're dealing with live residents living there. It's different from a construction site where you can take your time and walk through. So we really had to have a really good process. That's one thing that just alleviates a lot of pressure from the property management because actually they can finally sit back on their chair and put their feet up, and we will label all the keys. We'll basically hand over a system that is turnkey, right?
It's kind of the smoothest onboarding possible for both the residents and the property managers to just go on with their day after that.
Yeah. And then I guess the benefits that they kind of saw were, I would say, instantaneous, right? Because now think about, like, we've done some student housing projects early days. Like, those projects in particular are turning, let's say, 400 students every 4 months or 8 months. And then they have to move in 400 new ones. And that is the number
of keys that get lost.
Like the keys, the fobs, the stress of just handing out keys, booking appointments. It's almost like a 2 to 3 week ordeal to kind of move people in and out. All that with Grata is now basically gone. With smart locks on the door, it's as simple as just removing everyone from the system, importing your list of 500 new students, and they all get their digital keys. And there's a couple of buildings now which have never had physical keys, have never had physical fobs, and never had garage clickers. All of it's been digital from day one. And the benefits are, they're now all those costs of the personnel, equipment, rekeying locks, all gone, right? On top of that, there's a lot of convenience for both the resident and the PM. PMs can now kind of somewhat work remotely. And in a general sense, like an implementation of a system like Grata just allows regional or on-site property managers to manage way more units and residents with less, right? With less staff. So they can be more remote. They've got a mobile app to do things on the go on some aspects of property management, a web app that's the brains behind the whole thing. And then residents have a mobile app that they're essentially using 5 to 15 times a day because they're coming in and out the building using it. They're doing their changing the thermostats and stuff with it. So when they get a urgent notice from the property manager, they're getting it through email, text message, push notification. Like, it's guaranteed being delivered. People are seeing it, and the responsiveness is so much faster. So we've got all these like in-app chat modals and stuff. So if you have an issue in your unit, take a picture, post it, and PM on the go, no matter where they are, can see it, respond to you, actually rope in a vendor. Vendor gets digital access, can go straight to the unit, solve your problem, and everybody's, in communication the whole way through. And I think there's just a lot of transparency, for the residents, because they can now see like how quick managers, supers respond to their issues. If their unit gets access without their knowledge, like now it's not without their knowledge, they know because they get a notification. Yeah. Lots of benefits on site in terms of the time, the effort and time that property managers have to put in. So you can, make your headcount and staff a bit more efficient that way, where less managers can manage more and manage them more remotely with, app-based or web-based access.
Even those. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, and then it's just all the costs, and then you're also improving the experience, the living a residential experience so much for prospective renters that they actually put a premium on it, right? It seems like the ideal case for most renters is that they don't really ever want to talk to their property manager. Like, they shouldn't have to email, call, or ever visit a physical office. It should just be the more out of the picture that they are, the kind of better the experience for the residents. And that's kind of what we're providing.
And that's how you disrupted the traditional approach. Even some of the examples that you've shared, I think, could be a good segue into technological aspect of it. So maybe, Roman, I think I'll pass it to you on some of those, because I have questions in my head, but I know you always light up when it comes down to that topic.
For sure. We are a technology focused podcast, and that's kind of the angle that we'll try to take. But before I start, I just want to say that I can't wait when you guys will get into the American kind of ecosystem, because I would love to introduce you to my building managers.
It's just like
several sets of keys, and no access to communication other than a phone or some and stuff like that. Even though the building is great, but we're so used to technology, it just feels so rudimental to do some of these things, in an analog way. Moving a little bit further into a technology, and I would love to dive a little bit deeper in that space. You mentioned that you were retrofitting some of your operations into existing buildings. I'm just curious whether you were building some integrations with different vendors, different providers. Is that the case, or were you installing your own hardware on top of what was existing there? I'm just curious about the story behind that.
Point. So another approach of ours is to be as hardware agnostic as possible, right? So we don't manufacture any of our own hardware. We don't store any inventory. We simply, like, as you mentioned, integrate into the best I guess, the best rated, most used, most frequently available hardware that's out there. So to talk about, the best smart locks or the best thermostat that cover, let's say 80% of the market or so, are the ones that we want to work with. And all our like software, so our app, like all the software features are all kind of built in-house. They're proprietary to Grata. Where we sync with hardware, yes, we integrate with various different hardware partners via mostly like SDK. So we found like API integrations weren't reliable enough. The keys have to be up. Like there's just more monitoring and maintenance with kind of API based integration. SDK integration gives you like better control, better data, more customization. So we kind of always do a deeper kind of integration with especially like the smart lock kind of component of things. And everything else is API based, or like for access control systems, we may take what's called an electrician approach versus a API based approach. But that's
there are so many solutions out there. I'm just curious if you have a number in terms of the vendors or hardware vendors that you've integrated with. It seems like it's almost limitless.
Yeah, it is limitless. Yeah, it's we see a lot on the smart home, like single family side as well, which are slightly different. But the list keeps growing. Our integration library has definitely expanded. It started early days with like just a handful, and now it's just every month or so we'd want to bring a new one to kind of the table. But we have good coverage now for at least the most like important aspects of our platform, and those would probably be like smart locks, thermostats, and access control, intercoms, camera security. Yeah, so there's quite a lot that has to be kind of tapped into for it all to seamlessly come in through the centralized mobile apps. And then I was going to mention something else about APIs and SDKs, but the thought escapes me right now. But maybe it'll come back to me.
No worries. If it'll come back, let us know. I'm just curious. It seems like this breadth of integrations is an asset of itself. Obviously, it's important for your business, but did you have any plans, for instance, like licensing some of that integration technology? I don't know, making it available in open source or something like that, because I think it's a massive amount of work, and you can leverage that as well.
No, definitely. And we've seen a couple companies start to do that. Like they get a major integration with a major partner, some of which have like paywalls behind it. You have to pay to integrate type of thing. And then once they've done that, they like charge for you to integrate. I think it's an effort in itself to make those available. So we've thought about it. Right now it's just basically serving as many asset owners, property owners, and property managers as possible, and being able to be a quick, fast, like effective lift on a building and its operations. And we've done pretty well on the retrofit side, where a lot of the portfolios are like, oh, great, like you've sorted out the present. Now, why don't you shape the future and look towards our new developments, where that's more of a blank canvas and less of it. We've got optionality there to put in the right tech stack, make sure that it's all seamless from the get go. And I just remembered my last thought, and it was on basically a lot of these SDKs and API integrations, and to complete these integrations require you to work in certain frameworks and stuff, right? So like building mobile apps in React Native, probably not going to fly because you'll need to have Kotlin and Swift integration with certain types of hardware. So those are things I think we caught early days, and we always built our platform to be as native as possible. So all our Android apps are in Kotlin, all our iOS are in Swift, and then there's kind of other frameworks there on the web app and the back end that need to be compatible with some of these integration partners. And that's also because you've seen companies kind of build stuff in React Native maybe, or React, and then having to eventually shift if they want to onboard a new integration. So
I can relate to that. I guess you only know once you have experience working with that. We do have experience going native and hybrid, and in terms of working any IoT related products, obviously you want to go native, even though React Native is catching up. It's doing a lot. There's been a lot of progress in the recent years, but still nothing beats native development. And just expanding a little bit beyond that, and looking into the kind of hot topics of today is one of them is obviously AI, and sometimes it's overhyped, but I think we can't skip that if we're looking long term. I'm just curious if you're incorporating any of the AI tools in your operations or in your application in your product.
A little. I think the first way that anyone internally in any company would use it, I think, this is the way we started anyway, was essentially using it as a co-pilot for our development team, right? And not like relying on it, but just using it as a point of reference, point of correction, just using it in your processes when you're building things out. And that's been helpful. It's been able to kind of, make things a bit faster or whatnot. Other ways we are currently using it today and how we plan to in the future, it's more of like it's kind of like an additional add-on, right, for a lot of clients. So it could be cost prohibitive, but an example would be, there's some very good, robust, comprehensive surveillance platforms out there, as an example. They might be cost prohibitive for multifamily real estate. They might be really good to protect banks, vaults, commercial buildings, that type of thing, hospitality maybe. But it may be considered overkill for like just a standard 100-unit multifamily building. That doesn't mean that building doesn't need security. So like some of the things we've been able to do is take an analog camera system that they don't really want to rip and replace, but their feeds are there in a local NVR, and so we're recording locally, but they want to make it cloud-based and want to add some more measurement and analysis to those feeds to automate certain things, right? So those are some aspects of how we can take those old school cameras, make them cloud-based, feed them into our portal so people have a remote view on them at all times. You're not outsourcing it for remote monitoring, that type of thing. And then you can essentially add on these AI modules that will do things like people counting, pet counting, courier counting, car counting, all that type of stuff, and log that data so it's accessible. And then you can take a step further and do gate and that. But all those things cost an extra, if you've got 100 cameras, they're all streaming, you want cloud support for 60 days, and you want AI to kind of analyze everything on top of that, it can get up there. Other ways we're looking at kind of phasing it in is basically all the automated like notification stuff, right? The system knows when people are moved in, when their move out date is. 60 days prior to move out date, you should be expecting an automated, basically AI-based message to kind of go out and give the option: are you renewing the lease, ending the lease? And similarly too on chat-based support, right? There's always like an escalation where, the first trigger, you need support. There's app-based support. It might be an AI that's talking to you there. It'll escalate to a real human. Real human talks to you, and then it escalates to the point where, whether it's a physical conversation or a property managers have to be kind of roped in. But I think we're keeping our ear and eyes to kind of the ground on AI in general and on all the ways we could potentially leverage and use it. As you probably know, like real estate is there's typically a slower industry to adopt technology in general. So I think the wave of like just the smart devices, smart platforms, and centralization in terms of platforms has just really hit the market. And it's started to become a forefront kind of goal for a lot of portfolios because, markets heavily shifted to residential. There's a lot more competition now. So the new stock has all the kind of bells and whistles and the savings and the efficiencies on NOI are quantifiable. And and now that existing buildings are starting to realize, hey, there are solutions out there for me where I have an existing building and I don't have to, be a new building to have all these things. They're starting to, be itemized in budget cycles and things like that. And it is creating real impact. for residents and especially the managers too, because they get to manage more with less cost.
Right. I think you're absolutely right on the cost side, and on the other side, building managers need to know what to do with this data. It needs to be actionable, right? We've spoken and worked with some of the companies that, for instance, analyze amenity occupancy, and then this AI can let people know whether certain areas are occupied or the patterns of occupation that, at this time of day, it's more free or not. So there's definitely some use cases, but probably it'll evolve in future and help people. People.
Yeah, and another, it's not really AI, but it's an auto setting that's in like these smart thermostats, right? So some of them come with inbuilt occupancy sensors. Basically, if it's paired with management, yes, residents have control, they have full ownership of the thermostat, they can control it locally and all that, but they're preset with management configuration. So let's say, like, if I left the AC running and took a weekend holiday, management can actually, have an automated control in there to switch that off or have it go to energy savings mode. And these things do add up, right? If a lot of people, especially if you're renting, they behave in a way where they're just like using all the utilities, and the most critical are things like, avoidable damages. So like someone cranks a window open in the middle of winter, leaves the AC running, leaves the house for a day. That's a potential risk for a fan coil blowout. And that's a lot of damage and cost for the building to deal with. And all of those kind of situations are prevented, avoided. Same thing with things like leak detection, right? Like that's more gearing towards the new development side. There's still a lot of options for retrofits, but that's another technology that we're now seeing is basically a prerequisite for a lot of new development projects. Like one of the number one like costs of damages and annual kind of maintenance costs for buildings is water. Like water damage, water leaking, cleaning it up is a pain. It basically sometimes affects residents. They have to leave certain units and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of those can be, you have sensors to detect as soon as those things go off, and you have shut-off valves to immediately turn off water in places where leaks are starting to happen. So,
thank you. And just to expand on that, because basically AI, whatever the tools are built in, it's going to be built on analytics and data. I'm just curious in terms of how much data do you collect and how much of that is available to your property managers, and whether they can make informed decisions based on the available data today, even without the AI. How is this playing out for now?
It's pretty powerful, Roman. Like I think that's another thing that's what's one of kind of like the hidden gems amongst the Grata platform is our data analytics, like reporting capabilities are quite comprehensive. There's like a full dashboard for all types of analytics and data. So, I'll give you one example. So like having a digitized way. So rather than carrying around a physical fob, your phone just unlocks all those doors now, right? It was kind of built for convenience and accessibility and ease of use for managers, all that type of thing, but it accidentally became a massive security upgrade to these buildings. And now we're seeing like actual regulation in certain US states. Florida, as an example, you might be aware of, has like Maya's Law, a new one just called HB 837. Basically, it's on these buildings and their operators to actually have real-time accessible logs of people coming in and out, who is coming in and out. And then if you have camera security systems, like those need to store on a cloud and potentially take pictures every time people are coming in and out, and just have that as a log that's sitting in the background. We're kind of an out-of-the-box solution for kind of situations like that, right? Like we try and take account of every single person that's an actual user resident of the building. Even a step further, we can actually account for all the guests, because guests have digital-based access, so do vendors, all that thing. So there's a lot of traceability on who's coming in and out of buildings, increased security for residents, audit logs, and traceability for property managers. And we've actually assisted in a number of like police investigations and a couple of FBI raids too, if you can believe it or not. And they love the data that's on our platform. They can really tell when people are coming in and out. They can tell if there's fishy activity, and residents are kind of protected as well, because if there's an unwanted character that's continually coming in at the building, their access can be shut off right away. Same thing with squatters. That's a problem in a lot of buildings where now digital solutions are you're able to kind of shut that off too. But in short, we give the managers as much as we think that they want, but then there's always asks that we add more. But overall, we give them kind of full oversight on how to manage their data. They can see a lot of the reporting and analytics that come out of it and filter that kind of stuff. So all suite door usage, all common access door interactions and usage, smart thermostat data and usage, how many service requests are created, how long it takes for service requests to get solved. So there's all type of property management benchmarks and data. Same thing with residents, and there's some actionable insights that can come out of it, right? So an example would be a building that we have, small building, like 92 units or so. They had two like rooms on the first floor. One was like a social / party room, and the other was like another amenity. And one thing they learned through the data of the doors is just they're never booked. They're never used. Nobody fobs into them. And the usage is basically an all-time low. And then through the app, you're also able to send out like personalized surveys, right? So if just that operation team wanted to like send a survey to the residents, even with a small sample, they'll get the answers they need. But what ended up happening for that building is they realized nobody's using these two amenities. Let's convert these two amenities into revenue generating units. And that was a good result for them. Similarly, same thing, like you can see which amenities are being used the most, in which case you have to add more of those amenities. As an example, locker systems would be an example of that. You start with one and then suddenly see like smart.
I love this example. I love this example. The amenity occupancy and actual usage, I think, is a big potential that many of these buildings can apply. I see a lot of applications. What you just mentioned about the police using your some of that information, and FBI, the amount of use cases just grows and grows. And I think we're at the starting point of this informational boom, especially in real estate, since it's lagging behind some of the technological advances, but there's so much potential in this industry to grow. So we're just starting to see some of these use cases play out, and we'll see more in the future.
Speaking of the future.
Yes, Rodé, that's a good segue for
because like a lot of these nodes have a few thoughts in my head. Because on the one hand, it seems like Grata is already allowing some of the tenants and property managers to live in the future, if you will. If we take a perspective of the average user that has the keys, whatever the number is, fobs and more analog systems, Grata is a step ahead, providing that future for some of the folks out there. How does your team stays ahead of these various technological trends? Sometimes it seems they appear like day by day, but at the same time, not always. Are there any recent tech innovations that excite you, or maybe you see Grata using in the nearest future?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a lot. There's definitely a lot to learn, a lot to keep your eyes on the ground. Like we are fortunate enough to work with like a big installation network, a hardware vendor network. So through that alone, we're able to kind of see what's the latest coming down the pipeline. Another kind of crash course in learning this stuff is actually because we're so involved in implementation. We've been on site. We've seen the conditions. We've seen what works, what battle tested certain things, what works under certain conditions. I am excited about, various pieces of hardware that are becoming smarter, more cost effective, and basically just have a lot more functionality in general. And I think, the prevalence of AI is definitely going to play a role in some of these, making these systems even more automated and smarter. In terms of, like there's some cool things, right? There's like fingerprint scanning, facial recognition. Those type of systems have been around, they exist, and there's just more fluid ways to and make sure that they're actually working on site.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of something like that really is like it. Most of the newer stuff to me is still, it's kind of older news in a sense, but like I would say there's some infrastructure things that we're working on that we find particularly cool. So back to one of my earlier points when I was saying like there's a lot of the activity for smart living solutions was geared towards new development, and there was a reason because a lot of those systems depended on like Wi-Fi or managed Wi-Fi or bulk Wi-Fi based like system or managed Wi-Fi based system. Basically, all those hardware had to be connected to one single point, and everything had to be Wi-Fi based. But we've noticed that does a few things that drains battery life on hardware very, very quickly if they're constantly connected to Wi-Fi. They're somewhat less secure because you hack a Wi-Fi network, and some of these buildings don't have very secure kind of Wi-Fi networks, and technically you've got all the devices then, and it's a prerequisite cost. So for these new development buildings, like you're basically putting in hundreds of dollars per unit in cost to have a managed Wi-Fi solution, only then to spend the thousands of dollars per unit to put the system in. And now this is where we enter with kind of like an offline version of that, right? So it's all Bluetooth and cellular based, and it's I would argue just as fast, reliable. It's actually kind of skipped that generation where buildings are kind of moved to 5G now. Like having better cellular 5G coverage in your area can actually create all types of efficiencies. And then we have a couple cool concepts on our end where, I mean, I don't know how much, I don't want to get in trouble with my CTO, but it's kind of a concept that he calls like lateralization, where you can essentially, push a command into the cloud. And then because there's this concentrated group of users in a building, you can have a user with a Grata app walking by can unknowingly push a command to, like, let's say a piece of hardware that property management instituted.
It's more of a mesh network concept, basically.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Love this.
So there's some unique things, and it's all in the spirit of essentially minimizing the cost of implementation, cost of kind of recurring management for these type of systems, and then just having it being as fluid and seamless as possible, so that managers have remote control and can really basically just do a lot more with just a smartphone or a web app, right?
Yep. Thank you. I think, Renee, we'll move a little bit further to there's basically two questions that or topics that we'd like to discuss. One of them is basically company social responsibility, and one of the things that we like to focus on, and I saw it in your profile as well as on the website, that their social sustainability is a big aspect of what you guys do. We all care about the environment, and more companies incorporate sustainability as one of the key aspects of their operations. And I just wanted to ask what role does Grata play in helping with that? Is any of that Grata's operations affecting sustainability efforts, making more, energy efficient solutions and things like that? Just curious if you can expand on that topic.
No, definitely. Yeah, we do have there's a big ESG spin to putting in a platform like Grata, right? Like if I just take the E, like environmental, you've got smart thermostats create lots of energy efficiency. On average, you put in a smart thermostat system that's managed and controlled, you're going to reduce your like overall energy cost by minimum 26%. That's like from some white paper from certain smart thermostats, but a lot more. Water conservation, also huge. There's so many buildings that have just no idea how much water gets used, how much gets wasted and leaked. Putting sensors and shut-off valves, or you're able to kind of see that stuff. And ironically, a lot of water gets wasted through toilets. They just keep cycling through, and that's where you can Also save a lot of water. Waste reduction, huge too, right? No more physical plastic fobs, no more keys being manufactured, paper, commutes, like managers can now sit at home and manage things if that's, part of their protocols. And then we try and really push our like hardware vendors as well, right? To think about like sustainable materials and sustainable packaging. So traditionally, a lot of these hardware came in big plastic boxes, and like half the weight of some of these skids would just be material, like packaging material. And we've kind of pushed to kind of change all those type of so there's sustainable packaging. You're packaging more items in one smaller box, that type of thing. So you're saving on carbon footprint of shipping stuff. Batteries too, right? So like some of these hardware devices use physical like AA batteries, and you can get more responsibly made and rechargeable batteries, for an example. And then the other thing is like actually actually analyzing and collecting data on your carbon footprint. Like you need a starting point. You need multiple starting points to actually get like that first like carbon report, right? And I think like tying into smart locks, tying into smart thermostats, water leak detection technology, and just getting a lot more data of what's actually taking place in the building is kind of your building block to then run that through. There's certain partners that we know, like you have a certain data sets, you give it to them, they can create all that type of analysis on really what is your carbon footprint. And if for certain portfolios, like having net zero buildings is a goal, and we're able to kind of quantify that goal. And then the S component on ESG, it's the resident manager experience. Everything's become a lot more convenient and accessible. There's a social element just there alone. Residents connecting with each other, connecting the property manager. There's community building, mobile access. So that's accessibility and inclusion, health and safety. Again, your huge security upgrade to the building. And then I guess the last piece is the governance piece, right? Which is that's kind of where you're just being compliant in all regulatory kind of frameworks. So data privacy, security, regulatory compliance on cybersecurity, building codes, and then just having all that transparency and reporting available for the managers, available for residents. Like the system, the code doesn't lie at the end of the day, right? So
yeah.
So that's kind of, and then there's some ethical considerations where we'll select products, vendors, and we'll also get residents to weigh in on certain decisions. Like it's very easy to send a quick like survey through a resident app, and if you've got them unlocked because they're using it to come in and out, most likely they're going to quickly answer a 10-second survey that may have a major impact. So yeah, I think we're absolutely a big ESG play for portfolios, and some of which we're able to quantify in terms of like lead points. Like you have a smart thermostats, water leak detection systems, certain types of eco-friendly locks, for example, and then even like add in car sharing in your parking. Like you're going to get more lead points and have a more sustainable building. So.
Love that.
Thanks.
I love the fact that you're even going into the changing your packaging suppliers kind of practices. That's awesome. Love it.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a very exciting conversation. I don't know. We'll ask our audience to leave their comments, their feedback, but to have that preview into the future, or for some even to live in that. How does our audience learn more about Grata? Any new features you're releasing, or any residents and property managers that want to learn more about what you guys do? What are the best channels to get the most recent updates from your team?
Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely check out our website. It's not great. We don't do a great job of marketing ourselves, so it's literally just a landing page. But you can book a call with us right on our website. And then from there, typically, it's a bit stealth, but as soon as we get on the calls, we're able to do kind of full product demos. And that's really where people get excited about the capabilities of the platform and what it means for their actual on-site operations. One thing I'd say is things are very customizable, modularistic, so that we can kind of cater the best digital experience based on what's occurring on the ground. But I'm happy to share my information as well, so people can contact me directly. But our website book a meeting, it will go right to our sales team or our CEO directly. And we can get in touch.
Perfect.
On the resident side, we're kind of an invite-only app, so like you have to be invited by the building community to see the app and everything.
There is going to be maybe a number of residents that at least are going to know what to send to their property managers.
That'd be awesome. That'd be great. We're always available, ready to talk to anyone who is thinking about putting smart living technologies into their buildings, and we're happy to talk to them all day about how it's quantifiably going to save you money, increase better resident satisfaction, and basically just make it a smooth process for everyone involved.
Sounds great. Thank you, Arjun, for your time. And we'll make sure to include some of the contact information and references in the video descriptions. And thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for the conversation. This has been quite a journey to get an insight into such an innovative approach.
It's my pleasure, and thanks for having me.